Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Hogside. This is Alex Zeese here with you. My man Steve is always by my side, and we have one of our reoccurring guests now, Robert Henson. Welcome back to the show. We haven't talked to you in a little while. I actually think it's been about 3 or 4 months since you were last on the show. Hope you're doing well with everything going on. And, we just kind of want to get your feel for... or get a reaction from you about the whole Redskins offseason so far, how you think things have gone, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, man, I've been good. Thanks for having me on. Luckily, everybody's been healthy, happy. The biggest issue has just been trying to keep everybody occupied.
Yeah,
and not
stay sane, right?
With the little kids, yeah. So, but it's been good, though, man. Appreciate you having me back on.
Well, we're happy to have you back on. Let's get into the Redskins. We last talked just as the season was ending, and I think Rivera had been hired, but that was pretty much the only move that we'd seen the Redskins make. What do you make of the Redskins' free agency and the draft? We'll get into the draft next, but let's start with the free agency. It was kind of quiet. What did you think?
I did. I agree with that assessment. I thought it was very quiet. I thought they took little risk. They went after guys that were prove-it guys. For instance, the Darby contract.
Mm-hmm.
You're an elite linebacker, prove it. I mean, you're an elite corner. Sorry, you're an elite corner, prove it. Sean Davis, can you turn the corner? Can you be a good safety in this league? Prove it. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of the running back situation, the McKissick signing, the Barber. I don't know if that was a depth thing. Those are the only signings that I really didn't understand. I thought it was already going to be a running back room with the addition of one guy, but now you bring in another guy. That was a little questionable to me, but overall I was happy with the draft. We dodged the bullet with Dunbar. I thought he made little quiet moves, steady, quiet moves, to get guys, culture guys, or to get guys in to see if they could be their position.
I think Darby's going to end up being really important because there's a lack of talent. Because say what you will about Quinton Dunbar and his now new legal problems, which is just an insane story. But I mean, Ronald Darby is about to become important. So can he play? Can he not play? I mean, I'm afraid he's one of these kind of underperforming guys who has a natural talent. He's never going to live up to it, and that's not going to bode well. So talk to us a little bit more about Darby.
Well, Darby's situation is unique because he flashes, and you think, okay, here he goes. And when he was with Philly, you just kept thinking, okay, here he goes. When he was with Buffalo, you saw the talent, but he just kept getting hurt. So I think injuries are going to be a big part of how he's remembered, or if he takes the next step in this league. If he can stay healthy for a full 16-game stretch and buy into the system and really perform, then I think you'll start to see him. You'll see him get a long-term contract from the Redskins. But I love the deal. People complained about it. I love the deal. I'm a little skeptical of short corners. Darby's 5'10" maybe. I like 6-foot guys. That's just my preference. If I was building a team, I'm not the GM. So, but he plays with a good motor. He just has to prove that he can stay.
Hey, I want to jump to one of the other kind of weird under the radar signings, and that was the whole Thomas Davis signing. 37, he's still playing linebacker. Now you were here when London Fletcher was still playing that last. Like, it's mind blowing to me to see these guys in their late 30s keep going at that position. It's so physically demanding. I mean, what do you think of him? I mean, is it just impressive seeing these guys out there at that point?
Of
Or
course,
what?
man. Of course. You know, Thomas Davis, London Fletcher, those guys are volume tacklers and sure tacklers. I thought Thomas Davis had a pretty good year last year with the Chargers. I think he led their team in tackles. But to me, that signing says I need someone here who understands my culture or
Mhm.
what I'm trying to build. I need someone here to lead these young guys, and that's exactly what Thomas Davis signing said to me. Is like, I'm gonna do you this favor. I'm gonna give you another year. I need you to, put the culture together or give me a voice to the locker room.
Mhm.
Well, it brings up a good point because now we've got Reuben Foster and whatever he is. I still don't know if he's going to play, not play, if he's healthy or what. We've got John Bostic, Thomas Davis. Where are we going to line these guys up? What is the optimal lineup for the linebacker core with these guys? Because I know they have particular strengths. You talked before you were on last time that Reuben Foster maybe is the Sam. So where are we in terms of Davis and Bostic?
Well, Bostic is a true Mike to me. He's a true Mike linebacker, middle linebacker. I think Thomas Davis has to be that weak side guy. Or you could flip flop Davis and Foster as those guys. But I think traditionally Davis has been a weak side guy,
Mhm.
patient defender. But you're right. We don't know what we're getting out of Reuben. And then if Reuben isn't available to play, Holcomb can play that weak side. Then you flip Davis over to the strong side. I think Davis is very versatile in where you can play him.
But Davis is a true outside linebacker.
Yeah, he's a true outside linebacker in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
But
I'm just
if
worried
Reuben
about
Foster isn't ready to go.
And I'm just worried about Cole Holcomb. And I know he's kind of caught the fans' attention. And, God bless him. He's a fifth-round draft pick, played well for a fifth-round draft pick. But, I mean, he has weaknesses in his game. Let's not pretend he doesn't.
His only weakness to me, in my opinion, from watching him play is he's not good at taking on blocks. He can get erased out of the play, which is where you would, if you got a guy who's a good athlete like he is, who's getting better in coverage and understanding coverage, you put him on the weak side. You put him on, like those guys, you have little responsibility in the run game except the cutback, but you're probably playing the most coverage out of any other linebackers, the deeper coverages.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was going to say, let's move on a bit to the draft now, but we'll stick with linebackers because one thing we talked about before you came on was the whole Kahleak Hudson draft pick and this unique role he played in college, this Viper position. And we're wondering if you could kind of help us figure out what that is, because Steve and I never played linebacker at any levels, and so you probably would have a better understanding of what those roles were.
There's 100 times more about it than we do.
Well, there are a bunch of names for it. I mean, I've heard bandit, I've heard rover, I've heard all kind of stuff. But the key thing that fans need to take away from this draft pick is versatility. And I wouldn't think of him in the traditional sense of he's going to play weak side linebacker. They'll probably assign him there just to say, this is your role, learn it. But if the casual fan needs to know that this guy is a sub package linebacker. You got better tight ends in the division with Ertz and Goddard. Those are the type of guys that those Viper positions can cover. They can run with them step to step. They may be a little smaller and getting pushed around a little bit, but I like his versatility, his experience at safety. He's definitely going to be a big part of the sub packages. You can use him in any kind of blitz scheme, off the edge, from the nickel position, straight up the middle as a linebacker. So that's something the Redskins hadn't had from a lot of players.
Isn't he kind of a poor man's Isaiah Simmons to a certain extent?
I would say so, honestly. I would say so. That's a good comparison. Yeah, he just doesn't have the size. He has the speed, I believe, not as fast, but he's not. He doesn't have the size Isaiah has.
How do you? I mean, is it really all that different then from like what the popular term was, money backer a year or two ago? Everyone was looking for a money backer.
Yeah,
is it any different? Or
yeah.
Hudson was known as a punt blocker, too. He talked about that in his post-draft comments. Now, I mean, I played in high school, and not nearly at your level, but we didn't have the punt block play You know, I mean, I don't really know what he's talking about. I mean, I know he's blocked some punts, but is that just luck? Is this something that at a much higher level than I ever played, that's something you can actually plan for, or is this dude just have a knack for it, or what?
It is. It is. In special teams meeting, I remember Danny Smith telling everybody, like, you're going to play outside. You're going to play the two from the second guy from the outside on the punt rush because you got the best matchup this week. You got the most speed. You can beat him, get around the edge. And as you know, special teams play can turn the game. So you do want to put those guys who have a knack for it, a sixth sense for it. I blocked a couple in high school. I blocked a couple in college. Never touched one in the league. It's just a lot harder. So, there is something that you can plan. That is something you can plan for and put a guy in.
The bigger question. Let's get to the bigger question though. Obviously, Chase Young is now a Redskin. You know, Redskins fan rejoice, hallelujah, it's all around. So the real question though is, obviously he's an elite edge rusher. Let's hope he lives up to his billing. How can a guy like that affect the rest of the defense?
It affects every level. When you think about, I'll just start up front. When you think about having that kind of elite speed, especially him in combination with Montez Sweat. It affects those guys in the middle. It affects Allen. It'll affect Payne because you can't really double team anybody. I mean, you gotta, your guards are going to be looking to help on stunts because those guys are elite rushers. Let's say they get around the edge. Most quarterbacks will slide to protection, which will give another guy an advantage. So all the focus being on Chase or Sweat will give other guys advantages up front. And when you think about the linebacker position, people are going to check for Chase Young and Sweat just a second before they move to the next level. And by people, I mean offensive linemen. Sure. They're going to have to make sure those guys are out of the way before they can move up to the next level, which gives them linebacker an extra step to get upfield. When your pass rush is elite, your corners can play more aggressive. They can take chances. They can gamble and jump passes because the ball has to come out quickly. So having Chase, it affects everything on that defense. And my question is, how will they use him? He has enough strength to line up inside. I mean, we know he's an edge rusher, but I'm saying in those sub packages, you can get crazy with it and create a NASCAR package like the Giants used to have, where they had Justin Tuck inside and was looping him around and doing all that. I just want to see some creativity from JDR on how to use those guys. I mean, you put Kerrigan in there, you can do everything. So
Sorry, Alex. I just kind of wonder who's going to be on the right side, who's going to be on the left side, because obviously, on the right side you're facing the left tackle, but we've got two elite guys now. So are they going to flip flop them? Ryan Kerrigan, I guess, is sort of stuck on the left side because he's got a hearing problem and all that stuff. But I wonder how is this? What is the base? What is the base going to be?
Well, I think Chase has a little more upper body strength. I think he's more compact and ready to take on those left tackles who are obviously bigger and more aggressive. Typically, your best tackle, you're not your best tackle, but typically your right tackle is your run blocker. So they're not as adept at pass coverage. So I would flip-flop those guys as much. I'll make sure they got experience on both sides, especially during the preseason if we have one. I would flip them around, make sure they got experience on both sides. But it really favors Chase Young to be on that right side. I think he's a better matchup for those left tackles.
And you've kind of touched on it, how much it's going to open things up for the linebackers, just creating those easier lanes for them to get through to the runner or to the quarterback if they're blitzing. But I was wondering, how much of a difference is it? Is it really only going to help just the one guy behind him? If he's on the left side, it helps the left linebacker, or does it help everyone at the same time all the time?
I believe it helps everyone at the same time all the time because we have the guys that we have up front. You got a Ioannidis, you got a Payne, you got a Allen, you got a Sweat on the other side of Kerrigan. Those guys really can affect a defense and make things difficult. I mean, affect the offense and make things difficult for offenses. So I think the combination of all of those guys helps all the linebackers, but especially Chase on that right side.
I tend to think that Ron Rivera is probably out of respect for Kerrigan going to list him as a starter, because he's a vet. You're shaking your head. You're really shaking your head. So tell me, am I wrong? Am I right? Obviously, I'm wrong.
I do think he might do that. But from what I understand, JDR has the final call on all that stuff. He's just gonna let him do his thing.
Okay.
I'm one of those people. I love Kerrigan. I'm like, we cool as ever, but I think we held on too long. I think last year should have been the last year.
Did you really see a noticeable drop off in his play?
Yeah, just from, I mean, he's always been limited in his moves. I think him more of a power rusher.
Sure.
And there are ways you can use him in this defense. So I don't want to completely write him off because he still does have gas in the tank. But I think you got to just go with the young guys. And
I just don't think Rivera's going to do that, though. He's a real pro vet guy. You know, I tend to think that, at least on paper, we're going to see Kerrigan left side number one, you know, and they're going to rotate Chase in at the beginning. I just think that's more sounds like.
No, you don't rotate Chase in. Hell no. No, you rotate Sweat in. You don't rotate Chase in.
Okay.
I think ideally you try and get them all a similar
field.
Number of snaps in the end, right? And same with the interior guys. You got 3 good interior guys. Just keep them all even.
But you just told me that JDR has a final say. Is that something you've heard from inside?
That is something that I've heard from inside, is that he's going to let him do his thing. He's not going to babysit him and try to take over everything. But I think Kerrigan. I think we should have got rid of Kerrigan the moment they made the decision or settled on Chase Young at 2. I think it could stunt his growth. Stunt Montez's or Chase's growth. I do think it kind of helps having a guy there that can say, hey, I went against this guy. I went against Tyron Smith. He's weak in this area. You know what I mean? Like, can help you that way. But, I mean, we got scouts for that. So it's just
Yeah. So I want to move to the running back / wide receiver that we drafted, this Gibson guy.
Antonio Gibson, not Gibson.
Antonio
guy.
Gibson. Thank you. I was forgetting his first name for some reason. And we have 2 Antonios. But so the Redskins seem to now have a glut of players, in my opinion, that have this weird hybrid role where they can run it or they can, be a receiver. And you got a couple guys who are more running backs. You got a couple guys who are more receivers and smaller, like Sims. But how much harder does that make it for a defense when if the team starts putting out 2-3 guys like that on every play you literally have no idea what they're gonna do?
Well, first I'll say that running back room is crowded and it's going to be a dogfight. I think a couple guys are just bodies. The McKissick signing only makes sense if you running him on 3rd down. But then you're taking a guy like Gibson off the field if you're doing so. But to answer your question, it's very difficult. The first thing as a linebacker you come out and you want to do is recognize formation and who is where. So if you come out and you see a running back at receiver, then that automatically tells you if it's man coverage, a linebacker has to go out with the running back. So then you had a mismatch right there because there's another running back in the backfield. So your linebackers are gone from the middle. You know what I mean? You got to match up. You got to match like bodies. Sometimes safeties will call you off and tell you to cover back the backfield, or they may free you up as a free play in the middle. But just rule of law, like I'm looking where the running backs are. If I'm the man coverage, I got to match up. And then it throws off which strength you call the defense. So, you look at what Kansas City did. They lined Tyreek Hill up almost everywhere in the backfield, whatever. I know he's listed as a receiver, but, he's lined up at running back. And I think that's where the league is moving, if you ask me, kind of positionless, just in a certain sense at the skill positions. You just want to get your most electric players the ball in any way possible. So with that being said, you could see some jet sweeps. You could see, I thought they got really creative with Sims last year, and you can see more of that going forward.
Well, I don't think it's an accident that Andy Reid is involved in this, because he did this at the Eagles. I think you played against Brian Westbrook, did you not?
No, Westbrook, I didn't play against Brian.
You didn't? Okay, well, he's another one of those guys. Andy Reid's always kind of had this weird, like, hybrid running back, do everything, kind of thing. And Andy Reid, is on the forefront of a lot of these things, I think.
Well, because he had Westbrook before that. He had Deuce Staley who did it, and then after he had, who's the guy that went to Buffalo?
I played against McCoy. That was
McCoy, who
yeah.
he for a couple of years was probably more dangerous than any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was one of the ones that had a double 1,000 season where he had 1,000 receiving and rushing. That guy was a nightmare.
We know you're running out of time here a little bit because you've got other stuff to do. Who else sticks out? Who other than who we've talked about? Who sticks out for you among the draft picks?
It's just the usual guys, honestly. Chase. I don't know what to make of Sadiq. I'm not an offensive lineman type of guy. Like
you can't identify it.
I can't really identify traits and things. I lean on my buddy Robbie Duncan for that.
Yeah,
sure.
But, Robbie loves Sadiq Charles, by the way.
Yeah, he
sung his praises on our show.
From listening to him, he says that Sadiq is not a tackle. He's a guard type. He doesn't have the arm length. So it just makes you wonder what they're going to do at left tackle. Are they going to give Jason Peters a call or whatever?
Cornelius Lucas, maybe.
Yeah, so Chase Young and Kahleak Hudson are really the guys that really stuck out to me in this draft. Closely following those guys would be Gandy Golden.
Gandy Golden, yeah.
Yeah, Golden, yeah. So I'm interested to see. He looked like a Brandon Marshall type to me, like a,
hopefully minus the mental illness.
Well, yeah, and then Santana said he'd worked with him on his release. So, I think that's what really stood out to me from watching him was that he struggled to get off the line, but once the ball was in the air, it was his most of the time. I am concerned about the level of competition he played against.
Yeah.
Santana seems to be a free coach for this team half the time. You
need to hire that man.
Yeah. Well, why hire him? He's still helping these guys even without getting paid.
Yeah, Tanner, man, that's just how he is, man. Especially he sees something or unique trait in a young guy that reminds him of himself. Why not, man? He always been able to help.
It's funny you say that because I can't think of a guy who physically doesn't look anything like Santana Moss.
Yeah, they're totally different. Have you had a chance to watch James Smith-Williams at all? I mean, from North Carolina State. I mean, I know he's a 7th-round draft pick, but it's in your wheelhouse.
It is, but I hadn't seen anything outside of the usual highlights that ESPN showed when they drafted him, or kind of a wiry frame. But he can. I thought just from seeing that little bit of footage, he played a little high. So pad level, which is something you can coach. I mean, I played high when I first got to the league, and then KO coached it out of me. So it's something that you could. It's something that you can coach, man. And I didn't pay too much attention to him, and not that he's not important, but I do think that he's more of a project type of.
He's probably in the deepest position group right now we have.
Well, another thing too is that maybe they thought for the position that they were drafting him, he was kind of a steal because he did get in some trouble, which would have made him a mid-round pick. From what I understand, I don't know, but
you don't want to speak out if you don't know.
Yeah, he got in some trouble, and that's what dropped him. But I thought you could have picked up a guy. I would have gave Thaddeus Moss that opportunity rather than signing him in free agency.
They got him anyway, though.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I'm excited about him too. He's not a draft pick. I know you asked about draft picks, but I want to see. I think he needs to lose weight. I think he needs to become a better route runner. But definitely the hands are there. You can't argue with the pedigree. I'm not hung up on his name, but you can't argue with that.
Hey, let me ask you that. That brings up a good point, actually, because I'm assuming that Randy Moss is going to be hanging on Redskins Park to some extent or another. I don't know if you guys had anybody like that, maybe not at the level of Randy Moss, who's maybe one of the best receivers ever, but what kind of effect can Randy have on the team? Just being there and talking, being in the room, being around the sidelines, I don't
Basically,
know. Does that help?
Players.
Well, that's automatic credibility. He's a Hall of Famer. Listen, honestly, when I was playing, Sonny Jurgensen was sitting on the damn couch with a cigar in his mouth, and we used to listen. We used to sit and talk to Sonny, and if he didn't like something you was doing, he'd call you over there. He mostly did that to offensive players, but he'd be like, "Hey, you come here," and he'd sit them down and talk to him. But you automatically gain their ear and that respect. Like this, what he's about to say to me is revered, and it's truth, and it needs to be taken as such. So I think that's what you gain having those type of guys walking around that building.
So you as a player sound like you embraced it, but I assume some players probably don't like having those old
I
timers.
don't know, man.
There.
Randy Moss. I think everybody'd love having Randy Moss around.
You can't argue with Randy. I embraced it, but it wasn't a lot of it. Fletch didn't teach me shit. Excuse my language.
It's okay.
He didn't care to teach me nothing because he understood like you're a late round pick. You hanging on.
Well, wasn't Fletcher a late round pick? I mean,
that's what my thing was. You know, Fletch was like, "Hey, a late round pick. He ain't get cut. He's not on." He's not just on special teams. They trying to teach him.
He was an undrafted free agent on top of that.
I thought he was a seventh rounder. He was undrafted.
I'm not saying that I was a threat to Fletch ever. I'm not
trying
to say that. But I think he realized the business of it. He knows the business of it. He's been in it for so long. They bring in guys to take your job. When Perry was drafted, he didn't teach Perry nothing. So it's just, he's like, you'll figure it out. And I used to ask him things like, Fletch, how'd you know it was run there? How did you know it was passed? He's like, oh, man, just, 13 years in the league. That was his answer to everything. Was you see everything. So I was like, all right, so you're not going to teach me shit. Okay. All right. Got you.
That there could have, that's a shame. He's probably got a lot of valuable knowledge.
I would agree. And what makes it more difficult, Maverick, what makes it more difficult is that when you come in, or when I came in, they were like, KO, my linebacker coach, Oliver Dottie, was like, hang on to everything Fletch says, watch what he do, emulate it, learn what he learns. Like, just so you think, oh, shit, I got to attach myself to this guy. I got to learn as much as I can from him. I got to, I want to be an apprentice. Hey, man, teach me, man. Like, I really want to learn. And then you come in and he's like, nah.
That's it. That's really interesting because the public perception of guys like London Fletcher, we're not picking on him, necessarily, but
not at all. He's definitely a Hall of Famer, man. One of the best linebackers I've ever seen.
But the public perception, because he's got a gregarious personality and he's charismatic, and so it leads dummies like us who just watch on TV to think this is a dude who's probably out there helping everybody. And you tell an opposite story, and it just goes to show that you don't really know what people are really like.
Right. What guys do with the camera on them is always going to be different.
Yeah.
And I say that as a guy who has a documentary background.
But he was a great locker room guy. We knew where leadership was. We knew he was a great leader. Nobody ever questioned his leadership. But as far as pulling a guy aside and saying, hey, on this play, you want to look for this. You want to get depth to the middle of the field, or the quarterback will be looking for this. So drive on that. And just, it wasn't there.
I mean, is Thomas Davis that guy? Because you'd like to think that Fletch, like Davis, is the new Fletcher's kind of. That's what you'd like to think.
I would believe so. I don't think Ron would have brought him in if he wasn't, because he needs, like I said, he needs a voice in the locker room. When people are questioning Coach, Thomas will hear it and go, "Nah, I know everything about this dude. Like, let's focus. Let's listen to what he got to say. Let's give him a fair shot." You need guys like that in the locker room. And when I think about it, those guys are planted all over the league. Coaches go with players that they can trust. If I'm gonna get fired, I'm gonna play the guys that I know and trust. So
it's kind of like the whole having your sergeants that you trust kind of mentality that they have in the military for the officers. I got you. All right, Rob, I know we probably kept you longer than we should have. You said you had to go make breakfast for the kids and all, so.
Yeah. A late brunch.
Brunch. Tell the kids it's brunch. Kids love brunch. But thank you for joining us again. We always love having you on, getting your insights, because, you provide a unique look into the team and the league that most of us don't have. So thanks for joining us. And hope everyone stays safe.
We'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. You guys stay happy and healthy, man.
Sounds good. Always love having Robert Henson on the show.
He's got so much great insight.
Yeah, the London Fletcher thing, I never would have guessed that. I always assumed that a guy like Fletcher was, like you said.
You know what, though? I've always thought that, but he had some negative things to say, like after he retired, if you remember.
Fletcher?
Yeah, he did, about the team and about the coaches and stuff. And it was kind of right after that, he kind of stopped being in the Redskins' orbit, Because, for example,
still doing TV now?
Well, he was on NFL Network. I haven't seen him on the NFL Network in a while, so I don't know if he's. Yeah, but it's like, for example, like Rob was talking about Santana Moss, and how Santana just willingly gives, away, free advice and all that stuff, and Fletcher clearly does not do that with the
Right.
Redskins, at least. And the Redskins are probably he was with the Redskins at least as long, if not more, than he was with Buffalo.
I think I looked at his resume a while ago, and I think it's pretty evenly split, like a third of his career in St. Louis, Buffalo, and DC, but we edged them out by a year or so.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It just goes to show you never really know what people are like.
Well, and again, probably a Hall of Famer, like a great player. But yeah, I mean, the teaching thing is different.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people in my own occupation where they don't want to teach other people how to do their job.
Yeah.
Me, I kind of like helping guys learn, but that's just me. It's a personality thing.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on because we have two other topics to get to. We talked about it briefly in the interview, or we touched on it with Henson, but I don't think we want to get into this whole Quinton Dunbar story with him.
Not since he was limited in time, at least.
Yeah, limited in time, and we'd rather talk to him about players that are on the team. But Quinton Dunbar, if you've been living under a rock, he left the Redskins, went to Seattle. We traded a 5th-round pick, which everyone kind of said, well, we didn't get enough for him, at the time. Now that is looking like the steal trade of the offseason for the Redskins. Because
it's like we traded for a car that blew up as soon as the car left your driveway.
A Hugo or something, right?
Yeah.
It's a Hugo. We traded away a Hugo.
Not a Hugo, Hugo.
Hugo. Sorry. Yeah. It was before my lifetime, I think.
No, I think we traded away a decent, like late model,
like a Honda Sonata or something.
A decent car. I mean, he was a better player than that, and the car just literally went up in flames. As soon as it left there.
Steve, I know you've read the entire 15 or is it 17-page legal document.
It's 14 pages.
14 pages. And skim through the header at least, or the cover page.
Yeah, I know. And we're going to do a deep dive into this on the next It's Just Business show,
but
just because I can't help it. It's a crazy
sounds
story.
Like the craziest story involving an NFL player in a long time.
This is like straight out of Fast and Furious, to be perfectly honest.
All right, so I'll break down what I've read in the general news, and you can touch where I may have missed something or they're saying things incorrectly in TMZ and stuff. Quinton Dunbar and who's the other player?
DeAndre Baker.
DeAndre Baker.
Defensive back, DeAndre Baker.
Yeah, 1st-round pick, too.
Right.
So Dunbar and Baker are in Miami. They meet up with some people I guess they didn't know or vaguely knew, circles in a club, and started gambling. And they lost a lot of money to these people. Then they go to these people's house a day or two later, continue to play video games and gamble, and then suddenly DeAndre Baker pulls out a pistol, it sounds like. Someone in a mask shows up, and Dunbar, Baker, and this third guy rob the entire party of up to $70,000 worth of stuff.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the gist of it is that the police had 4 different witnesses, and
I'm assuming the other people at this party.
Yeah, and these are people, all people that, Baker and Dunbar know. One of the witnesses said Dunbar had a gun. A couple others said they didn't know. One of them said he didn't have them. So there's a debate about whether Dunbar had a gun. He got charged with armed robbery because they had a witness that said he had a gun. Now, to be fair, the lawyers for Baker and Dunbar claim they have affidavits from people at this party who said none of this happened. Now, I mean, quite frankly, to me, the credibility of something like that is limited because, these are all their friends who at one level or another are on the payroll anyway. They're in the orbit of NFL players, and nobody wants the NFL player to lose out. So
we assume friends. They could be new acquaintances.
These are people in their orbit.
Correct.
Yeah. So the funniest part about this is, and the reason why this kind of struck me as credible from somebody who's read an awful lot of police reports. I mean, a lot of police reports.
Yeah.
And by the way, the other person that Alex is talking about was identified as someone named Shy. It doesn't have a last name in here.
Not an NFL player, just random dude who was wearing. And the only thing I saw was he was wearing a mask in the news.
Yeah, and he wasn't charged for some reason. It's only Dunbar and Baker, but
that's odd.
But these guys. the reason why it was credible to me is that one of the witnesses testified that they had 3 vehicles outside lined up and pre-positioned in such a way that is, quote, to expedite an immediate departure from the area. Okay. But they had a Mercedes, a Lamborghini, and a BMW. Those were their getaway cars. Mm-hmm. Allegedly. That part really struck me as credible. If one of these party goers, victims, noticed that the cars were pre-positioned ready for an easy escape, that tells me that, and just the story, generally speaking here, the story kind of is, like Alex said, they lost a bunch of money earlier, so they go to this party, and at a certain point, they stand up and they rob everybody, and then they've got just some sick cars lined up as the getaway cars, which is, if you want to try to blend in after robbing people, don't drive a Lamborghini.
No, drive a Toyota Corolla, the most generic car in America.
Right. A Lamborghini, a Mercedes, and a BMW is not the one. That's why I said it's like Fast and the Furious or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so I don't know if they've turned themselves in yet. I know that
we are recording this on Saturday about noon East Coast time. They have not turned themselves in yet.
Right. But I remember seeing basically their agents or lawyers are trying to negotiate them coming in peacefully.
Their agent isn't doing anything.
Okay.
Their attorneys, what the attorney will do, you try to negotiate a turn-in and get everything pre-set up so they don't have to sit in jail very long, okay? Mm-hmm. Because this warrant is a no-bond warrant. And what that means is that they need to sit in jail until their arraignment, okay?
Right.
Because a lot of if it's a small crime, you get picked up for misdemeanor marijuana or something, and then in that case you bond out and then you show up for your arraignment in a day or two. When you're talking about 8 counts of assault with an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and armed robbery, you don't get that privilege. You get to sit in jail. So their attorneys are going to try to set up the date and time of the turn-in to minimize that. That's the goal.
Basically, hey, they'll show up on Monday if you can arraign them on Monday.
Exactly. Basically, that's sort of it. I haven't looked up the exact punishment range in Florida because I can tell you that it's going to be decades. Yeah, the max I can get is going to essentially be life. Okay, if you add all these up, and a judge they were going to get convicted in Dunbar's case, all 4, and the judge sentenced them consecutively, they could end up getting life. They're not going to get that, but this is a thing that you could conceivably, legitimately get a sentence of decades. Mm-hmm. If you go to trial and you lose, it could be decades.
If you plea out, you're still probably looking at a long sentence.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these guys don't have a choice. You can't, if you're an NFL player, you can't plead guilty to armed robbery and keep your career. No, I mean their careers will be over. First of all, the NFL will suspend them for a long time because this is not like DUI. Okay, no. This is not a weed thing. This is not like I had an argument with my girlfriend and this and that.
It's not a victimless crime as people like to call it with drugs or prostitution. There are victims. There are 8 or 4 victims.
And I just like to point out, and we need to move on here, I know, but the arrest warrant talks about what they robbed. $800 in currency, $18,000 Rolex watch, $4,000 some other watch I can't even pronounce, $17,500. These guys can just go buy it. Aren't these guys millionaire? Aren't these guys millionaire athletes? What are you doing robbing people for watches?
I mean, okay, you lost money and you're bitter. I get that, but
it's just like you and me playing poker, and I lost $50 to you in poker.
Right.
The equivalent for them is this. Okay, this is like, hey, let's go have a fun week. Let's go out and have a fun night. And to me, that would be sitting at home watching game film. But I mean, to a normal person, go out to party, go to the bars, and you lose some money. And that's what it is to these guys. And why you would ruin your life. This just goes how stupid.
Both these guys have contracts of at least a couple $1 million. I know Dunbar was unhappy that he was only making 3 something. But guess what? You're making $3 million a year.
And let me tell you something. From somebody who's prosecuted, I don't claim to be a career prosecutor, but I did do it for a while. I've never seen a police report and an arrest where it is completely wrong. Okay, of all the cases I worked, there was one case where they had misidentified somebody and arrested the wrong guy. They arrested senior instead of junior, and they had to let him go. It was totally wrong. All the rest of these, it always happened. Whether or not you're guilty or not under the law is a totally different matter. Were the elements met? Did the arresting officer violate your rights? All that kind of thing. But I'm just telling you, in all of these events, the substantive events almost always truly happened. Okay, the odds are overwhelming that these guys did what they said, and that these affidavits that these attorneys had, it's probably for a bunch of hangers-on that don't want to see them go down. I'm just telling you that's, if I had to guess, that's what I would bet on that. Don't bet on that they're totally innocent, because they're probably not.
Yeah, well,
in my opinion, at least a bit watching this, some of this has credibility.
Sure.
When you read these police reports, you may say, okay, well, Dunbar has, guys that say he doesn't have a gun, and some say he did. And this happens a lot in police investigations, because people don't, in the moment, in a stressful situation, people don't really remember what they see. It's not uncommon at all for people to have conflicting stories like this. Yeah, but the substantive part of it is probably true, to be honest.
And just to reiterate, obviously, this is all going to have to go to trial. So we don't know what's going to come.
Yeah, I'm just giving you my opinion.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. But we always want to make sure we have that little disclaimer in the show.
I'm just telling you, the odds are, from every police report I've read, the odds are this probably happened. Whether or not they are guilty or not under the law is another matter, but it probably happened.
It's just a shame to me because, again, you guys have it made. You're making millions of dollars playing a football, the most popular sport in America. You're icons. And this is what you're going to
ruin your
career
life
for? 70
You could
grand?
go to jail for decades for this.
Yeah.
I mean, but having the pre-positioned cars lined up outside, that really stuck out to me as an important fact.
Sure. That kind of detail, if someone's making it up, I doubt they make that up, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the Redskins, thank God they got rid of him. Obviously, they saw the dude was a knucklehead. This just goes back to what Rob was saying. You never know what people are really like off camera. Chris Russell, who I'm not really a fan of particularly, but he did write an opinion column that made sense to me about this. He said that, if you read between the lines, it was obvious that the Redskins didn't really trust Dunbar, just by the way the off season kind of went, and and obviously Chris is right for once. It's one thing he got right in his entire life. And the Redskins clearly did the right thing. Good riddance to Quinton Dunbar. See you don't want to be you.
Yeah, it'll be something I kind of keep an eye on, because I liked Dunbar when he was here, but
as a player, sure.
As a player, yeah. All right, well, let's
what the funny part was? We need to move on. But funny part is this dude did a Zoom conference call with the Seattle media like a few hours later.
Yeah, there was that.
It was totally calm and talking about, how, I think he mentioned something about how he was disrespected and, he's appreciated by his new team and all that stuff. Just go away,
also,
dude.
By the way, you were not disrespected. You were given a contract, and people asked you to stay here.
And I don't think he used the word disrespect, but that was what he was getting at.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, well, let's move on, because we wanted to do our running back breakdown, and we got about 15 minutes to talk about some running backs, because we actually have a pretty deep roster of running backs right now. Do you want to start at the bottom or the top, Steve?
Let's start at the top.
All right, we'll start at the top. Running back 1, the Hall of Famer, I think, Adrian Peterson. 35 years old, still playing like he's 25 years old. He had just under 1,000 yards last year, just over 1,000 yards the year before. How's this guy do it at 35 is amazing.
He's an athletic freak of nature. That's how he does it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's true.
No, I mean even by NFL standards, he's a complete freak of nature. Mm-hmm. Remember, he came back from an ACL tear in less than a year and was perfectly normal. Adrian Peterson level normal. He's a complete freak of nature, even by NFL player standards.
Right. He started to look like he was falling apart for a while, but then he bounced back when he came here. I guess the first question with Adrian Peterson is, I mean, I think he stays on the roster right now, but Ken Geis or Love or any of these other bigger physical backs that we have really threaten to unseat him at this point in his career.
I put in my roster prediction, way too early roster prediction from last week that I was on
Right.
the site. I predicted Peterson's going to get cut, and again, it was probably more wishful thinking than maybe reality, and I
Right.
realized that. But here's my point: Bryce Love had a quote normal ACL tear. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, the surgery was in December 2018. They basically gave him a redshirt year, because he'd also been hurt that year earlier that season too. Don't forget. But when he was fully healthy in the 2017 season, he was the best running back in the country. So I think what the Redskins did is basically said, "Look, we're going to draft you, take a redshirt year, get healthy, come back, and become your normal." Now, it's the reason why I don't think he's going to get put on PUP, because I know a lot of fans say, "Oh, they're just going to put Bryce on PUP." I think he's going to be healthy. By this point, it's
You'd
been
hope so.
18 months. He's either going to be healthy or he's never going to be healthy. That's my point, because it's over a year and a half
Yeah,
removed.
I mean, there
Okay.
was some kind of complication I remember with his injury at one point that they were talking about, but
Yeah, I know, but I think either he's going to have it or not by this
right.
point. So I'm just going to be optimistic and say he's going to have it. And if he does have it, and he's back to being Bryce Love,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to cut Darius Guice unless he
No.
has a career-ending injury. So where does that leave Adrian Peterson? Are you going to leave him as a running back 3?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't
That's my
expect that.
point. Is if Bryce Love is the Bryce Love we saw at Stanford in 2017, and Darius Guice doesn't get hurt, if Guice has his annual injury, that's another matter. But if they're
Right.
both healthy, I just don't know where Adrian Peterson plays. That's guess where my point is.
No, and I understand your point, and I mean it's going to be such a battle, and in my mind, and we'll get to all these guys hopefully, but
Well,
there's like two categories of running back we have traditional running backs, which is the three guys we just talked about, and then we have these runner receiver types, like we talked about with Robert, with Antonio Gibson, McKissick. I feel like plays that similar role, similar to what Chris Thompson was for us, where he was that third down back who you put in shotgun, he would go in the flats all the time, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But and I guess Barber is kind of that too. Not, I mean, I know he's
Barber's
bigger.
more on the traditional
Is
running
he
back.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Side.
I mean he's 225, so that would make sense. All right,
Right.
but let's go through the traditional runners first then, because we talked
Right.
about Adrian Peterson a little. Geis, year 3, he hasn't even he's never been healthy for what, more than 3
5
games in or
Yeah,
something like that.
if that, even
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, injury riddled. It doesn't begin to describe him, and it's partly bad luck on his part. But I mean, what can we expect? Can we expect more of the same? You think, or
I
is
mean,
it? Who knows?
yeah, I mean, if you know out there, I want your lottery numbers.
Right.
Because I just don't even know what to say about Darius Guice. I mean, when he's healthy and he's, on the field, he can clearly play.
Yeah, he's got
He,
great vision.
yeah, he brought a lot to the running back room when he was actually on the field. But at this point, how can you possibly trust him?
You can't,
You
and
know,
it's
I mean,
so it's a shame because I know some people are sick of his Twitter personality.
a
I
little
still
bit,
love it.
yeah.
I think there's something very genuine that he's when he's acting out or the stuff you see on. I don't think he's doing it like Robert Griffin where it's for marketing. I think
No.
this is just who he is.
Yeah, I don't have a
And
problem with it. I mean, I
yeah,
just generally don't like. I mean,
well, you don't like
Twitter is
social media, so
not really. No,
yeah,
the Twitter is the spawn of Satan, I think.
right.
But in terms of guys, I mean, he's a genuinely nice guy, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but that just, I mean, I root for the guy, and he's got a story. He's got, if you don't know his background, I'm not going to get into all of it here now. We're running out of time, but he's got kind of a blind side sort of story. Okay,
Yeah, he does.
he had somebody, a white woman, who worked at his school who ended up kind of taking care of him and taking him in, and he has a blindside story, and it's hard not to root for the guy. He's charismatic, all that, but he's just got to stay healthy, and that's
Yeah,
not news. That's not like a news flash or anything, but I just don't know how he can be trusted.
right. And
Truly,
I mean, I feel like we already touched on that with Love too, and we've
yeah.
touched on Bryce Love as much as we can because we haven't seen this guy play in 2 years now.
No,
And,
but it was kind of a redshirt year though last year.
yeah, it was, but even in college, he missed bulk of his senior season.
Well, he didn't miss bulk of the scene. He missed a couple games. He played 10 games.
Oh, did he play?
Yeah.
I thought he missed like half the season.
No, sir. I've got it right here.
Okay.
So, oh, and the site, of course.
It's all right. It's all right. I take your word for it.
I was going to read you, but he averaged something. There, it came back. Averaged 8 yards a carry in 2017 and 13 games. Had 2,118 yards. Senior year, because he graduated, so he was from Stanford.
Right.
Only played 10 games. Only averaged 4.5 yards a carry. Only had 739 yards rushing. He had another injury earlier in the year that eventually kept him out, of it.
That's what it was. He was hurt and he was down.
I would like to think that his injury is what ruined his senior year in terms of his yards per carry and all that.
Right.
I guess
that's a cartoonish number. What you just ate?
It's just crazy. Yeah. So if he gets anywhere near that for the Redskins,
right?
AP is going to be out.
Sure.
But what are the odds? And again, that's me being more wishful and hopeful than it is objective. Objectively, what you would say is, you can't trust him either, and you got to have AP around. That's the part of it.
That's the one catch is our two guys who I think you would want to be your 1-2 punch. There's just that big injury red flag, and and they're both again similar to AP in that they're going to be traditional, line up in single back or I formation and run the ball. And they're not receivers. They can, but that's not what they're there for.
Yeah. I kind of think that maybe what we're going to see is when we get to the preseason, AP isn't going to play much in the preseason no matter what.
No.
They might give him a couple carries just to warm him up, but that's it. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of Bryce Love and a lot of Darius Geis, and if they make it through the season, the preseason, look healthy and good, you might see Peterson cut. You might see that happen if it really looks good. They ran a lot. They didn't go down in injury. But if one of them breaks down in the preseason, I think that's what it may come down to the final day as to what happens with those three guys.
Okay. Let's move to Peyton Barber. Do you have his numbers from last year around? No.
Yeah. It closed on me. Give me 1 second here.
Yeah.
But Peyton, everybody's kind of ignored him.
Well, I think you look at what they've done at running back. When they brought Barber in, I feel like it was done more as we don't know if we'll get anybody in the draft. It's a depth thing.
Yeah, I have not. Peyton Barber's a guy whose yards per attempt has gone down every year he's played. Okay,
that's not a good sign.
No, didn't play much as a rookie with Tampa. 2016, only 55 carries, averaged 4.1 yards per attempt. The next year had 108 carries, 3.9 yards per attempt. 2018, 234 carries. He was the workhorse, 3.7 yards per attempt. Last year with Tampa, 154 carries, only 3.1 yards per attempt. Now, granted, Tampa sucked, okay?
Sure.
But he hasn't made progress, in the way that you would hope. If he had, Tampa probably would have kept him. I think Barber is kind of an emergency signing because, when they signed him, the AP, I don't think they had even exercised AP's option yet.
Yeah.
And you had two hurt guys in Love and Geis and nobody. And so they brought in Peyton Barber. Barber's going to have to prove himself. He's got a long road to climb.
Well, I think, and I think this is going to be true with McKissick and Ferguson as well, where you probably brought these guys in just because you didn't know what you were going to do in the draft. You didn't know if you'd keep AP initially. So, you always want to have insurance and depth anyway for the preseason. So I think that's what a lot of these guys are going to be here for. I want to change gears a little bit because I wanted to get to Antonio Gibson, but we did a poll on Antonio Gibson.
Oh, yeah.
That we kind of forgot to put in our prep, but let's pull that poll out. Now, I know it didn't get good numbers because I saw the number of votes wasn't great. And,
I know. It's like, what do you guys have against Antonio Gibson? Come on, man.
And let's say this was an Alex poll, so that might be why.
Normally, the polls that get good numbers are out of my head. I just want to humble brag because I'm not that humble. Here's the poll. It was a good topic. Just for some reason, it didn't catch everybody's eye, but we got enough votes for it to matter. You know? So the poll was this. Redskins third-round pick Antonio Gibson was known as a dual-threat wide receiver running back at Memphis. How do you think he'll primarily be used in Washington? More as a running back, about equal between running back and wide receiver, or more as a receiver? So, Alex, it was your poll. It was your idea. What do you think?
I'm going to assume that the fans went with more as a running back just because I think that's probably going to be what happens. But Yeah, I'm surprised that this poll didn't really catch on because I really think it is an interesting question. But
Yeah. And it wasn't one of the worst poll we've ever done.
yeah. I personally, I would use him like mostly as a receiver. Like I've said on our website in the comment section, talking to people, I would
You actually
basically
stooped to talking to the stupids in the comments section.
yeah,
Alex?
yeah.
They're
But
really dumb.
I would line him up at H-back, at tight end, at slot receiver, outside, inside. I would have him in motion on almost every play that he's on the field. I would be using that guy just to create chaos every down I could.
So the fans voted by a vote of 50% that he was going to be equally used as a running back and wide receiver.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. 26% of the votes went to running back and only 24% went to wide receiver.
But that's
so the fans
pretty even overall.
Well, I mean, no, it was even between the second and third choice.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of comments, we didn't get too many comments because, again, this poll didn't do that well. But I'll go with Redskins Potato. Said he'll do both, but the D won't know till the skins break huddle, and even then won't know for sure. Can motion in and out of the backfield. That's kind of what Alex is saying.
Yeah.
Redskins Rant, who's another guy that loves to antagonize his fans like I do.
Yeah.
Said, I don't care as long as the coaches can utilize his strengths and ask him to do that more often. That's a good comment, for God's sakes. Let the coaches figure out what his strengths are and play to his strengths. Hallelujah.
Well, do that with 53 players. That's my reaction.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, Sean, who's at Florida Skins fan for life, says, I see him filling more of a Chris Thompson role than what J.D. McKissick will. He has Thompson speed, but he's bigger. So Sean sees Gibson more as a running back than anything. Yeah. Your boy Will, who's at Will A. Setzer, says Rivera will use him as a dual threat like McCaffrey. And Rivera's flat out said that. So, I mean, you are right about that. There's a few more, but that's kind of a flavor. I mean, for me, I did a deep dive into his film, as you know, Alex. And
I've been watching a lot of his highlights just because they're fun to watch.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. You can't get much out of highlights. But, yeah, so the way Gibson described himself to the media in his post-draft press conference was as a weapon. Right. And after watching his film, that's truly what he is. I don't think he's all that great of a receiver, to be perfectly honest with you. His run, he blew people away with athleticism in college. He would just flat out run by people. You know, you have a couple of those plays, the corner.
He's got good top speed.
He's fast. That's what I'm saying. He's fast. He's got burst. One of the touchdowns that I put out on as an example, cornerback rotated his hips the wrong way, gone, touchdown. So he's got that in him. Unfortunately, there's going to be less opportunity to do that in the NFL. But where I really kind of had an issue with him as a receiver is he's not really a great route runner. His footwork isn't really great. His breaks. And it can be coached. Don't get me wrong. This is not like a fatal flaw or anything. But his breaks aren't tight. He doesn't have moves. Some of the moves he has are strange and weird and aren't going to work in the NFL. He relied a lot on his natural ability. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just not sure he's up to the level he can be like a full-time slot receiver. He's not Santana Moss.
No. I think
not that Moss was a slot receiver, but
I mean, he was a limited touch guy in college. Like I think he only had 70 touches or something like that overall.
Yeah.
Which is not terrible.
Well,
but
understand though, Alex, that Memphis has a lot of Antonio Gibsons.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they're designed.
That's what they're known for. Yeah. And they play a spread. They've got a bunch of athletes constantly rotating in and out. Gibson is a guy who Memphis moved around a lot.
Yeah.
But he probably was more. The games I saw, I studied 3 games. I didn't study every game. Mm-hmm. But he was more in the slot more than anything else. Right. And I don't think he's a tailback. I think he's probably a better running back than he is a receiver. But he's not a true I formation power tailback either.
No,
I think he's more of a zone runner, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Cutback guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's Chris Thompson. I think he's more Cordell Patterson more than anything. He's more than a running back. He does have legit receiver skills. He's just not. I don't think you're not maximizing his talent by sticking him out there on the slot and forgetting about him. That's not what he is.
Now, I agree with everything you said, but I will say one thing about what I've seen from him and what I watched, and that is, if you just if you put him out on the edge from time to time and just tell him go deep, like
Oh, yeah.
he's got the ability, like Deshaun Jackson did, to take the top off the defense
Yeah.
pretty well,
Well,
and
absolutely.
like
You're
that
right.
can be an asset, even if he's not getting the ball. You know that's an asset.
I just think that his highest and best use probably truly is move him around as much as possible. Like you said, Alex,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think his highest and best use is just to have an uncreative coach that goes, you're a receiver or you're a running back. That's
Right.
dumb. When you have a guy like that, I don't think he's good enough to be a starting wide receiver right now.
No, no.
His role as a running back, because I didn't see him running out of a power I formation.
Mm-hmm.
He was more of a wing back.
Well,
Memphis played in a spread all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a different formation. Gibson is the guy who took the handoff and kind of hunted for his hole and then burst through it.
Right.
And that's not what you really kind of do out of a power formation. So I think that McCaffrey, that Ron Rivera truly will use him like McCaffrey. Line him up in the H-back. Line him up in the slot. Line him up as a wing back. Give him some carries, jet sweeps. I think he will be a do-everything guy who's sort of a good at a lot of things, master of nothing, but he's got so much speed and burst that we will occasionally see him take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, when he was running at Memphis, it was almost always out of shotgun because I don't think Memphis knows how to put a quarterback under center.
Well, they did. Well, I just didn't put the clips up there, but they did occasionally run. They did run power every once in a while. It wasn't like a completely foreign concept to him. The other thing about Gibson, because I know we need to move on, he's a heck of a kick returner. I mean,
that'll be something that he probably gets involved in.
Because Steven Sims was too, and so they've got two guys who can kick. They don't have a punt returner, but they do have two guys who are very, very talented at kick returns. So that's a positive thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would like to see him get into punt returns because I think you need to be a little bigger to be good at punts. Like the small guys struggle.
Memphis, so it's a problem.
I know.
Only had like one of them, but who else we got? We got Josh Ferguson. We can't forget about Josh Ferguson.
Yeah, we got Ferguson and McKissick. If we want to talk about them briefly, all right. Why don't we go with Ferguson since you seemed more interested in that one?
I'm not, but
no. Okay, me neither. Really.
No, I just didn't want to forget about him since we're doing our.
Let us mention that Josh Ferguson is on the roster.
Yeah,
that is your Josh Ferguson report.
I mean, does he have a chance of making the roster? Probably not.
No.
I mean, he's a guy who's there and he's going to get his shot.
Yeah.
He's going to get his opportunity to prove he belongs.
I didn't even look up his numbers. Is he a receiver guy or is he like a little speedy runner?
He hasn't played much. He just hasn't played much. He's a 2016, I believe he's undrafted. He's undrafted free agent. He's undrafted free agent out of Illinois. I
know he's kind of like that average 5'10", 205, so it doesn't really tell you anything.
He's only had where's his rushing? Yeah, he's only had 19 carries in his career. He's only had 20. He's had 20 receptions in his career.
Well, that tells you something. If he's an even split right there.
But it's an even split of not much.
Yeah, I know.
You don't really know. He's going to have a shot to prove he belongs. I don't know what else to say about him.
Well, I mean, every once in a while, a guy does come out of nowhere, right? But
yeah, I'm not saying
we got a lot of guys.
He's got a long road to hoe as well.
The hardest thing, and I remember, I've been to enough of these training camps now in the last few years. Like, you will always see one of these guys, a Josh Ferguson or J.D. McKissick, who looks great in training camp. And then even in preseason, they don't look good.
Don't the Redskins have a history of this? They
do. And it's the one guy, at least under Gruden, it seemed like they always had one running back who they were just like, yeah, you can tackle him. And so that was the guy who would always get hit.
Oh, can I dissuade some people of one notion real fast? I don't mean to backtrack, but
no, go ahead.
Antonio Gibson is not Lake Seastrunk, okay?
No.
Some of you out there have seemed to think that. Lake Seastrunk was an undrafted free agent who didn't have anywhere close to Antonio Gibson's natural speed and ability. Mm-hmm. The positive thing about Lake Seastrunk was that he knew Robert Griffin, and he's maybe a poor man's version of Gibson, but he was nothing like Gibson. That's just an insult to Antonio Gibson to call him Lake Seastrunk.
Right.
McKissick, real fast. McKissick is, I think, the leader in the clubhouse to be the third down back right now.
Right.
He truly is a dual threat. 5'10", 195. One of these guys Alex is talking about. You have to think that right now, at least, he's got that role kind of locked up.
Mm-hmm.
Absent Gibson, really blossoming, in his first year.
Yeah, and I mean that the hardest part for me when I look at this roster is like when it comes to doing your 53-man depth chart that everyone likes to do in their head. Like
Or
I
if you're
want
me,
to
you do
keep
it on paper and you publish it.
All right, well, yes, and I'm probably gonna do one too. I just was gonna wait a few months.
Hashtag neat content.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I could write more food things.
Hey, I don't
Everyone
know
likes the
how
food.
on earth, if I can mention that,
Yeah.
crab dip. Really?
Oh, it's delicious.
Oh, I was all the rest
You
of it.
you hate seafood though. I mean,
I don't hate seafood.
I thought you hated seafood.
No, I don't. I don't like crab. I
Oh,
love
okay.
shrimp. I like most types of fish.
Oh, okay.
But crab dip. I mean, look. Here's the real list. Okay, forget Alex published a list of favorite Sunday football foods, which I thought was great. His list was dumb, but I mean, the idea was good. Hot dogs, number one.
Yeah, of course. Hot dogs is your number one. Like on Tuesday through Tuesday. Like it. You eat hot. I'm pretty sure you eat probably 300 hot dogs a year at this point.
I don't do it much anymore because I usually don't buy them. At the for some reason. But I love hot dogs. If I get on a hot dog kick, I will.
Yeah.
And I've told the story on the air
Look,
before.
By the way, I'm not judging. I love a good hot dog.
Have I told the story on the air about the hot dogs at the football game?
Yeah, you have.
Before?
When you were at the in a suite and they were free.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know hot dogs are your number one. I'm assuming pizza's your number two.
Hot dog, pizza, hamburgers. 1, 2, 3.
See, I don't think of hamburgers as a football
crab
thing.
Dip and all this stuff. I can't get down. I'm not down with that, man.
Well, I mean, first off, I was also doing what I would make at home versus stadiums. Stadiums is a different story. You don't eat
whatever I can microwave.
Yeah, well, and you don't eat chili at a stadium generally, in my mind. Like it's not a stadium food.
Probably not. Yeah.
Other than Ben's Chili Bowl at Nats Park, and that's it. Because that's a DC thing. All right. Well, sorry. Let's get back to. We still technically have. Do we want to talk about J.D. McKissick? I mean, he's there.
I mean, is he the third down back? Probably so. Yes, third down back.
Yeah. I mean, we did kind of touch on that, but I don't know what you do because in my mind, there's at least 5 guys that could easily make the roster, but keeping 5 running backs is tough, especially when no one's a true fullback
listen, Thad Moss is the fullback, dude.
Right.
Thad Moss is a perfect fullback. Right. I don't think they're going to keep a fullback. I think your dream of a fullback on the regular season roster is not going to happen. I think they're going to use Thad Moss in the fullback role. That's what I think.
Yeah, and maybe Gibson as an H-back from time to time just to mix it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Chris Cooley, I think, said something on his show a while back that he thinks Gibson's a perfect H-back body type.
Yeah. So, what's your depth chart? We need to do depth chart.
All right.
Before
okay. For me, I'm not getting rid of AP yet. I think it's AP, Geis. I don't think Love is coming back healthy like you do. And I think Gibson's my number 3 guy. I don't keep McKissick. And I just keep those 3. Maybe you bring Love in or McKissick as the 4th guy if you're going to have 4 running backs. But in my mind, I want to keep more spots for receivers. I'm not worried about tight end. But I think we need more linemen and receivers than anything else.
So wait a minute. So what'd you say? You said AP.
I'm just saying AC, AP, Geis, and Gibson. That's it.
Okay, what do you think is going to happen to Love? Hurt?
I don't think he comes back yet. I think they pop him like everyone's been saying.
Okay, I'm gonna be hopeful for once.
Yeah,
because that's always me, Mr. Positivity. I'm gonna stick with what I printed for now. We'll see. I'm gonna hope that Love and Geis are healthy. That's your 1 and 2. They're gonna keep Antonio Gibson. I counted him as a receiver. In my 50, just because he had to go somewhere.
Sure.
I think I counted him as a receiver. I can't remember.
No, I think you actually had him as a running back. But
yeah, I did. You're right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kept 4, so I'm gonna say AP, Geis, Gibson, and McKissick. I think McKissick sticks around as 3rd back. I think AP gets cut right before the season.
Yeah. So you said AP, but you meant Love. You
said
sorry. Yeah. Love.
Let me start over because I was reading my notes about what you said.
Right.
So what I'm saying, to be clear, Love is the running back 1, Geis is running back 2. J.D. McKissick is the third down back, and Antonio Gibson is the whatever he is back.
Just put him everywhere. Keep him on the field and put him in random spots.
Right.
Yeah.
And then AP gets cut in the final cuts.
Cut or traded. Because I think he probably has trade value still, a guy like that.
Right.
All right. I think that wraps us up for this week. I'm checking my notes. Nope, no other topics for today. Because, again, no one's doing anything unless they're apparently robbing their friends. So, don't do that, folks. It's not
or if you please do, because it'll give us something to talk about that's fun and interesting.
How about this? If you're a Cowboys player, please rob as many people as you like.
If you're a Cowboys player, I'm probably likely that you're going to do that.
All right, guys, that should take us through the next week. I hope you all stay safe out there and keep listening to the Hogsty.